Ante todo, quiero señalar que este seminario es posible gracias a la contribución de la Dirección General de la Unesco, del Ministerio de Relaciones Exteriores, del Ministerio de Educación y del Sistema Federal de Medios y Contenidos Públicos de la República Argentina, la Universidad Siglo XXI, los Ministerios de Educación de República Popular China, República de Finlandia, República de Estonia, República de Corea, el Ministerio de Educación y Cultura de Japón y el Instituto Nacional de Educación de la Universidad Tecnológica de Ngan, Singapur. Vamos a comenzar con Ngan Hoe. ¿Cómo se pronuncia? How do you pronounce your name?
Ngan Hoe.
Muy bien. Ngan Hoe pertenece al Instituto Nacional de Educación de Singapur, que es el único instituto para la formación docente. Esto está centralizado. Él es doctor en Filosofía de la Educación, Matemáticas y Enseñanza de las Matemáticas. Tiene un título en Matemáticas Puras, obtenido en Australia, y un máster en Ciencias de la Educación en los Estados Unidos. Usted se formó en matemáticas con los métodos tradicionales. ¿Cuáles son las debilidades de esos métodos? ¿No se escucha la traducción? ¿Sí? ¿No?
Sorry, I still didn't get it.
No, okay. So can somebody assistant? ¿Puede alguien asistir al? Como dije ayer, este es un seminario sobre educación, no sobre tecnología. ¿Ahora sí? Muy bien. Decía que usted se formó en matemáticas con los métodos tradicionales. ¿Y cuáles son las debilidades de esos métodos y por qué en Singapur no?
No, I
Oh.
translation at the same time. So I couldn't get it. Okay.
¿Sí ahora? ¿Sí?
Yep, I can now.
¿Sí ahora? Tendrás que aprender español. ¿Me escucha ahora? ¿Qué pasa con la traducción simultánea?
Okay, yeah, I can hear you.
You can.
Yeah, now I can. Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
Bueno.
I just had a lot of translator going on at the same time, so I was trying to capture the English version. Yeah. Okay, sorry, Ambassador.
No, it's okay, it's okay. Decía que usted se formó con el método tradicional de enseñanza de matemáticas. ¿Y cuáles son las debilidades de ese método y por qué Singapur creyó necesario desarrollar un método distinto que es original y que ha tenido una gran repercusión en el mundo entero?
Okay, I think I'm not too sure whether I would use this word traditional. All I can say is we started in the 60s, 70s, and early 80s using what I would say a very Asian approach. Reason is that we only got independent in 1965, and most of the people in Singapore are actually migrants from the nearby Asian countries. I think they bring along with them the way that mathematics is taught and learned from their countries. So as such, being largely from China, India, and as well as the Malay Peninsula, you find that very much of it is, I would say, utility-based kind of approach towards mathematics. I think this is one of the, from my perspective, one of the characteristics of Asian mathematics. We tend to look at the utility of mathematics, how mathematics is useful in real life. I think I want to contrast it though with the way sometimes mathematics is perceived and viewed more in the European countries, for example, where there is more emphasis on the beauty of mathematics. I think these are two perspectives of the same discipline. There is no right or wrong, but it is an emphasis because of the culture of how the mathematics has developed as a discipline. So I would say that ours is more of a practice-based approach prior to the current kind of approach towards mathematics curriculum. However, we see that our students are not performing very well up to the early 80s, so we decided to actually relook at our curriculum. And at that point, our Minister of Education actually commissioned a group of mathematics educators to look at how we could improve on that. And one of the leader of this project team, which is Dr. Koh Tik Hong, decided that one of the things which we might want to do is actually to look at some of the learning theories, especially the classical learning theories then in the 80s, that explain how people learn. So he actually spent time going around the world to look at how people learn and came back and developed materials based on those theories, but change it and contextualize to the Singapore system so that we can actually use it in our local context where teachers can understand. He actually experimented it in the late 80s with schools, as well as developing the materials. And one of the things that we have moved away from is, rather than trying to emphasize on just how to apply mathematics, how to use mathematics, how to compute in mathematics, to the case whereby we talk about how students make sense of mathematics. Because we want our students not only to say that mathematics can help us in daily life, but what is more important is, could they also be able to appreciate some of the beauty of mathematics and continue to use mathematics beyond the school years. In other words, what we are trying to do is, can our students actually be not only effective consumers of mathematics, but eventually also be contributors and creators of mathematics as well. So you find that in the late 80s, when we developed this new curriculum, which currently, I think everybody is looking at what we call the Singapore Mathematics Curriculum. It is actually a developed curriculum based on the idea that mathematics is multifaceted. In other words, students do not only need to know the basic skills and facts and the procedures, but they should also be equipped with the process skills, thinking skills, metacognitive skills, heuristics to solve that kind of challenging problem, to bring them further ahead. But at the same time, we also talk about the importance of engaging the students. In other words, the motivation factor, how students actually would enjoy and engage in doing mathematics, because without that aspect, we cannot expect students to move ahead, to persevere in their problem solving. So basically, we did not move away from traditional. However, what we do is we learn more about how people learn. We learn what are the gaps in our curriculum, and what we do is we add on, trying to achieve what I would call a more balanced curriculum, so that our students are developed more holistically from the perspective of mathematics as a discipline.
¿Podría explicarnos en qué consiste el método, cómo es este paso de lo concreto a lo pictórico, a lo abstracto, cómo se desarrolla desde desde la primera infancia?
I see that the ambassador has done a lot of homework about Singapore mathematics curriculum. He's articulating one of the key approach in the Singapore maths curriculum, which many has been very familiar with if you have been trying to analyze Singapore maths curriculum. One of the key approach that we take is that, especially when we look at young learners, they are basically concrete learners. As such, the thing is that we should start from their concrete understanding of the world to develop the abstract mathematics. So rather than jumping into the abstract mathematics, which really at a young age we could easily lose our kids because they were wondering what we're talking about, instead we provide that concrete experience so that they can actually link it with the abstract mathematics. This again, the thing is, it doesn't come from nowhere. It actually has its basis on one of the great mathematics educator, Brunner. He believed that when people learn, in order for them to actually abstract the mathematics from the actual concrete experience, what is important is get kids to actually play around with the mathematics before they play around with the imaginary, that means the pictures, before eventually they can actually abstract that key idea, the abstract mathematics, and encode it in the brain. But the thing is, if for those of you who are very familiar with Brunner's work, you will notice that it's very academic. And for something like this to be used in the classroom context, I think teachers will be very confused. Even academics are still arguing about Brunner's work. So what we did instead is to actually use the key ideas to translate into what I would call a way that teachers can tap on that to teach in the classroom. So instead of trying to make it so complex, we say, okay, as teachers, when you teach these young learners, you should provide some concrete manipulatives, concrete experiences for students to play around with the mathematics first, before you start drawing it as a picture and eventually put in the mathematics. So for example, all right, when we talk about the fraction half, I hope this is not too mathematical. We all know what half is, half of an apple. So what you do is that you actually get kids to maybe fold a piece of paper and see that, okay, when I have a whole piece of paper, I fold it, I have actually one out of two equal parts. So that is what we call the concrete experience. Eventually, I will draw it on the board, I will draw a paper, and I say this is a fold line. You can see there are two equal halves. Now, there is a difference, a very subtle difference between the concrete experience versus this so-called picture, because unlike the concrete material, where the students actually can use their hand and manipulate it, the picture is something that they can't move it anymore. Now, some of us may say that, isn't that very much the same? But think again, I give you just an example of what I say, counting of numbers. Say, for example, when I say that the number 5, then when I get students see there are 5 fingers, this is concrete. You can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I can move them around, still 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But the moment I draw it on the board, right, it's stuck there. So the thing is that it is no longer as concrete to the learner, right? So the thing is that drawing it, getting them to start linking their thinking to the imaginary, it forces them to move things that no longer can move. It forces them to start thinking about how these things constitute number 5. So the imaginary itself is very important because it moves and forces the kids to start thinking and create objects of mathematics in their head. And eventually when you write the number, say half, in the case of my earlier example, half, you have 1 out of 2 parts, okay? You notice that although the 2 represent 2 equal parts and 1 is 1 out of the 2 equal parts, we just say half in English. I know that there are others who speak other languages here. Maybe different languages has an impact differently on mathematics. But in English, half, for example, doesn't really quite explain 1 out of 2. So that's the abstract part of it. So what we want is to help teachers to effectively bring in this concrete, pictorial, and abstract representation in the classroom rather than talking about Brunner theory. Now, this is very crucial because the thing is that be it in early primary, we're talking about primary 1 in our context, we talk primary 1 in some countries, grade 1, the kids are very young, you can start with that because you start introducing numbers. You can also talk about concrete, pictorial, abstract. Or be it later on, when we start to teach students more advanced mathematical idea. For example, area. Now, for many of us, we talk about area because it is something that is very natural. We already have that concept in us. But imagining you are trying to introduce a young child, in our context, grade 3 or primary 3. What is area? So again, it's important to have some kind of concrete experience for them to know what area is by talking about the amount of space that's being covered because it's two-dimensional. Then later on, you start drawing and say how this looks like, and eventually talk about area as an abstract idea of the space covered within a two-dimensional object itself. So in terms of what we call the CPA approach or the concrete pictorial abstract approach, we do not just say that it is only applicable to early primary or late primary. In fact, it is useful a way to introduce new mathematics, especially the abstract mathematics, to any child of any age. And I remember that I was very lucky. Throughout my teaching career, I have been able to be exposed to the teaching of primary, secondary, pre-university, even currently at a university level. So I must say that no matter what age a learner is, being able to bring the abstract ideas to the concrete and eventually being able to appreciate how it looks like when you learn the abstract mathematics always help people to better appreciate the mathematics and easier for us to actually do mathematics because it comes in so naturally. When it comes in naturally, there is no effort needed to memorize it because one of the things that make sense to us has already changed the way we view things internally, the whole schema inside there. There is no need for us to make extra memory to say this is something that important I need to remember because it comes in naturally. That's why very often for things that we can make sense, we find it very easy to do things because it can be recorded easily, right? So this is what we talk about, sense making. This is what we're trying to do. We're trying to get our kids to better understand the why of mathematics rather than just how of mathematics, so that eventually it is easier for them to understand the world. At the same time, it's also easier on the memory load. We call it cognitive load of the child when they're performing mathematical tasks, so that they can better enjoy the current task rather than trying to memorize so many things. I hope that addressed some of your concerns.
Permítame hacer de negative thinker, de recoger críticas que se han hecho al sistema, aunque hay una universal aprobación del sistema de matemáticas de Singapur. En Estados Unidos se ha desarrollado una escuela que básicamente se apoya en el método de Singapur, casi diría que es una adaptación, pero se llama Everyday Mathematics, la matemática de todos los días. Y contra lo que usted nos ha dicho, se señala que el método de Everyday Mathematics tiene que ver más con la vida cotidiana, con la vida real, y el método Singapur es en ese sentido más abstracto y menos útil.
Okay, I think this is a very, very good and important question. I have been meeting a lot of the French educators for the last 2 days. And one of the stand that I have is, I am here not to sell Singapore Maths as a brand, rather to share with you the journey that Singapore has taken. And I think this is where many of us should appreciate that we come from different social, cultural background, and that itself plays a key role. Now, when Singapore, for example, revamped its curriculum to do that, it is under the context that Singapore has evolved up to that point, and what we are good in and what we are weak in. It is to address Singapore's concern at that point. And I'm very, very sure that in any country, it is the same. In the sense that saying that you have your own sets of problems, you have your own set of strength. Remember, I earlier mentioned that, for example, in a lot of, especially East Asian countries, we are very good with computational skills, all right? I think we have some delegates here from China. I think they can testify. We even have our Chinese students who are in Singapore, and we're always very impressed by their computations, even much better than our Singapore students. Very impressive. But at the same time, the thing is that I also mentioned that in many of the European countries, for example, there's a lot of emphasis on creativity. There's a lot of emphasis on communication. There's a lot of emphasis on justification. There's a lot of emphasis on looking at the beauty of mathematics. Now, each one of us come with a set of strengths, but at the same time, also some of our concerns and weaknesses. So as such, the thing is, any kind of curriculum is supposed to address the social, cultural aspect that that particular curriculum is embedded in. So as such, even when I was invited to the US, I always tell them that please don't take the Singapore Maths curriculum just like that, because it's dangerous. It is like, just because my friend over there had a big, bad headache and take the medication, just then I had a headache, I just take the medication without asking whether is it suitable for me. I think each of us have our own set of concerns. But what we can do is with globalization, with the advancement of technology like what we're doing now, we are able to share with one another our journey. You might be able to pick up from there some part of a journey that's applicable to you, and as such, pick up some of the ways that we have approached it. So as such, for example, when you're looking at the Singapore Maths curriculum, as I mentioned it, we used to have a system whereby we are strong in getting our students to remember the number facts. We are strong with getting our students to do computation. Maybe not as good as some of the other East Asian countries, but certainly we have achieved a certain level of mastery in the basic skills. Now what we are actually weak in is actually getting our students to go beyond that. And that was the reason why we introduced what we call, in the late 80s, a curriculum that helps students to make sense of mathematics, to go beyond the basic. Now, as such, the thing is that I'm really, really impressed by the ambassador's insightful comment that certainly if you look at it from that perspective, it would be a little bit more abstract rather than looking at the so-called everyday mathematics. Now, however, having said that, right, I must say that over the years, we also keep on revising. Now, many actually have looked towards Singapore and said that Singapore seems to be doing well mathematically or even in science. But in actual fact, we are not sitting there thinking that we are great, because it is a fact that no system is perfect. We are also trying to reevaluate and relook at our own system, at our own curriculum. And one of the things which I think the ambassador mentioned was the everyday maths, where it actually brings mathematics closer to the everyday context itself. And this is where we also realize that some of our students may have lost the way they see how mathematics is connected with real life. And that's why since 2004, we started to bring in another aspect into the curriculum. And one of the things is what we call mathematical modeling, where we get students to appreciate that there is actually a way that we can use mathematics in real life. In other words, the thing is, rather than always look at mathematics, how can I apply it? You look at real life situation and say, where can I find the mathematics in this real life situation? Where are the mathematics that I've learned? Can I use some of this to model the situation and help me solve the real life problem? At the same time, there's also an emphasis since 2013, where we started to get teachers to bring more and more real-life example into our curriculum. So it is really interesting in the sense that because no curriculum, as far as I'm concerned, because as I move around, I notice everybody is trying to improve on their curriculum. It's static, it's dynamic, it's very interactive. We are always trying to improve. And over the years, we are changing. And let me tell you, even right now when I'm sitting here, we are using the 2013 curriculum, which is revised in 2012. But we're really starting to revise the current curriculum. We are going to put in place 2021, a new curriculum again. So we are moving along, and you're right in the sense that every approach, every curriculum has its own emphasis, but it is also the emphasis that address the problem that we wanted to address as a culture, as a society, or as a nation. Yeah.
Yo le dije cuando entramos que usted era la star, la estrella del seminario por la universal aclamación que hay del sistema, muchos países, pese a las diferencias sociales, culturales, históricas, sociales, económicas, políticas que usted señaló, están tratando de adaptar y muchos han adoptado el sistema, muchos estados en los Estados Unidos y otros países los han adoptado. Pero yo quiero insistir en los aspectos que se critican del sistema, que son minoritarios, pero que se critican. Algunos han sido parte de la autocrítica que usted señaló, porque es necesario, por supuesto, perfeccionar el sistema. Pero una de las cosas que se dice es esta. Singapur, los chicos de Singapur aparecen primeros en PISA en todos los órdenes, matemáticas, ciencia, lenguaje y comprensión de textos, no solo en PISA, también en TIMSS y otras mediciones que se hacen. Pero mucha gente dice que Singapur ha convertido a los niños en atletas, cuyo objetivo es llegar a una meta, que es ser primeros, y que eso genera una presión familiar, escolar, social, que puede atentar contra un aspecto de la formación del niño.
Okay. First of all, thank you so much for calling me the star, but it's a star that is not really shiny. Okay. Yeah. There are many stars here. So when there are many stars, all of us are stars. Yeah. Thank you so much for a very, very generous compliment. But I think, like I said, the whole idea is for us to create opportunities like this to share. And I really, really want to compliment the Argentinian minister as well as the ambassador for creating such a forum. It is really, really useful. First, for me, as an academic who has moved around the world, I really, really learn a lot from different cultures, different systems. And it opens up our perspective of what is possible. Right, back to the question of how does a system like this, which always want to be top in the race, created pressure? Now, first of all, I think it is natural, whether we are government or parents, or teachers, we want our students to achieve their best. It's only natural we want our students and our children to be one of the best. I don't think anyone would want to teach their students, having their citizens or their children, to be brought up and say, you are the last of the cohort. Although we say that maybe it's too much emphasis of being top, that I agree, but we all want them to be good, to be put in a good position so that we feel that we have completed our responsibility of putting them at the right place so that they can continue. Like I say, as a teacher, I always tell the students, you are definitely going to outlive me. My job is to educate and develop you the fullest that you can be so that you don't have to hold on to my hand, because don't hold. My hand is going to be gone before your hand. So it is important that we all understand that we want the best for our next generation, for our children, for our family. Now, however, the thing is, stress is always a factor. Now, particularly the thing is that I must say that it depends also again on culture. One of the things which I don't know how many of you notice, I think by now many of you probably have seen the pattern, is that in TIMSS and PISA, the countries that are doing very well generally are the East Asian countries. And is it surprising? I think there are some East Asian countries representative here, and you probably agree with me that generally the thing is that parents in East Asian countries are very concerned with academic achievement of their children. Reason is actually historical. In many of East Asian countries, performing well academically is a way to get people up the social economic ladder. So as such, the thing is, East Asian parents are quite willing to invest as much as they could, even at the expense of not having some kind of resources left for themselves for their old age. They will just plow everything just to make sure that their children has the best education, because that will promise them a bright future. Now, as such, the thing is, sometimes it's not just about the system, it's also about the culture. Singapore, having a migrant society that's mainly coming from the Asian society, has that kind of background too. So, particularly, you must understand, those who are familiar with the Singapore history, you will realize that the people that migrated to Singapore, especially most of them actually came in after World War II. They are the ones who did not do very well in their own motherland. They traveled to look for new hope. Singapore is a new hope for them. And to them, when they have their offspring, they would want their offspring to be better. So they work very hard, they throw in everything that is possible for them to do well. So the thing is, this is the part which is not about the education. This is the part about the culture that these parents, migrants that bring along with them. They are very, very supportive of the school. They may be very critical at times in some of the educational policy, but they will not hesitate to put in their best to provide their kids to do well. So the competitiveness, the stress on education sometimes is more than just the education system itself. Now, as a whole, though, the thing is that when we talk about a government body like Ministry of Education, when we look at education as a whole, I think we should look at it more holistically, not just about the curriculum, but also the culture itself. And I think this is where in Singapore, where we put education as only second to defense. Now, without a country, you cannot talk about education, so defense comes first, then education next. This is where the thing is, we are fully aware that a system like this where we are doing well and parents are very, very concerned about the achievement of their kids, when the two of them come together and spiral together, all right, it spirals towards a case whereby it can be very highly pressurizing for children. We recognize that, and we have been fine-tuning the system overall. For example, the thing is that for our system, we actually have, after the primary school, 6 years of education, we have what we call a primary school leaving examination. It's a kind of examination that just to ensure that our kids have reached a certain level of mastery before they proceed to the next group of learning, which is at the secondary level. All right. I remember when I was a student, the only thing we got was, okay, you either pass the primary school leaving examination or you fail, and then you just move on. But after a while, we realized that we want to be able to tell the kids where they're weak in, where they're strong in. So we start to assign letter grades to their subjects. And we only examine the core learning subjects to make sure that they can move on, which is basically English, maths, science, and their mother tongue. All right? Now, after a while, people start to be a little bit more interested in how well I perform. Oh, yours is an A, I'm an A, so how's your A different from my A, right? Being competitive, it's a natural thing that evolves. You start to introduce A plus, A. Then after that, you start to introduce numbers to that. But after a while, we realize that this becomes so competitive until people are concerned about what is it about 97 versus 96. We all know that. If you are trying to eventually tell the child whether you have succeeded in mastering the level of mathematics or science or language before you move on, maybe there's no need for this. So the thing is, the ministry actually scrapped now this kind of marks assigned to what we call the primary school leaving examination. This is to lower the level of stress that our students are facing. So the thing is, again, we are not saying our system is perfect. We do know it can be a pressure cooker, but we are always very, very concerned. We do not sit there just because Pizza and Tim say we are doing very well. In fact, there are also other indicators that say that we are not doing very well. It's just that sometimes people are just looking at one indicator, and we are looking at all these indicators to see how we could be better as a nation, because one thing about Singapore is we do not have any kind of natural resources. Our only resources is actually the human. If we are not very careful with education, this is where, as a nation as a whole, this is where I've talked about education as contextualized. Singapore as a nation as a whole, we will not be able to survive. So one of the things is we invest a lot in education because we know that the human resource is what is going to propel Singapore forward. This is what we understand our context to be. This is what we're doing, and we are trying our best to actually address that. Although some people still feel that maybe one way is to scrap the primary school leaving examination. But we are very careful. One of the things which we have learned over the years is we work on review of educational policy rather than revamp of education policy. The reason is very simple. Education takes years to see its result. We are very careful not to just change things overnight in a very drastic manner, because it is like what the English would say, don't throw the baby together with the bathwater. So we are very careful. We are doing the revamp, and we're hoping that we can see some results, but we are further fine-tuned. We do not deny that it can be a pressure cooker. But what we're trying to do is, can we make learning a little bit more fun? Can we remove those elements where it may cause more pressure to the learner, and as such, like what the ambassador say, it might have a negative impact on the learning of the kids as well. Yeah.
Déjeme decirle que yo tengo admiración por el sistema y que tanto es así que he promovido una experiencia piloto en una de las provincias argentinas, Mendoza, y se lo he propuesto a otra provincia, Córdoba. De modo que cuando yo hago estas preguntas negativas, lo que estoy buscando es su respuesta a algunas de las críticas que nosotros mismos recibimos cuando queremos promover, por ejemplo, el método de matemáticas de Singapur. Y otra de las críticas que recibimos, que tiene que ver con lo que usted acaba de decir, por supuesto, a mí no me sorprende que tengan los puestos que tienen los chicos de Singapur, creo que es consecuencia de este sistema, pero también muchos dicen que esta presión lo que hace es desarrollar un espíritu exageradamente competitivo, mientras que la educación también tiene que desarrollar un espíritu solidario.
Okay, again, the thing is that I really appreciate what the ambassador just shared. I don't take all this criticism as just criticism. I take it as a platform for sharing, and like I say, I learned a great deal just going through all this platform where we could share and learn from one another. Now, the latest concern that you have is, should education promote more than just simply competitiveness? Because competitiveness, I know we all will be thinking as the child being starting to be very self-centered, very selfish. How could they work as a group? Now, this is where I think we see education as beyond just the learning of discipline. In Singapore, we also look at the effective development of the child. We also have what we call the educational outcome. And one of the educational outcomes that we are trying to achieve is that our students are going to be effective collaborators. And this is where the thing is that other than trying to get our kids to appreciate a certain level of perseverance as well as drive to excel, we are not saying that you excel at the expense of others. And I think this is something that we all probably can appreciate as an adult. Certain level of stress is useful. Overly stress becomes unhelpful. Now, we do not want our kids to just sit there and believe that the world is waiting for them. The world will wait for them. They have to strive. Now, however, the thing is, it is also important that we teach our students, say that there's no point in running alone. The journey could be lonely, and you might not be able to get the best of it. This is where collaborative working is very important. How do I excel not only individually, but also as a group? Now, so this is where the thing is that nowadays with our classroom, we provide a lot of opportunities and avenues for students to actually work in group. We even have a framework, okay? We call it the 21st century competency framework. Within this framework, it's more than just talking about living and working in 21st century. It's about the core values that our students need to have, the kind of understanding they need to arrive at in appreciating the current level of globalization, where we need to be a bit more tolerant about diversity. We need to appreciate the value of diversity. At the same time, how can we tap on these differences as a group to move ahead? So we have a lot of group work. It is not just about mathematics classroom. You can look at our other subject lessons, be it English, the languages, all right, or the mother tongue. We all not only learn English, we also learn our mother tongue. So most of us in Singapore are effectively bilingual. One is our working language, the other one is our mother tongue. We are proficient at the level of communication. All right, so the thing is, no matter whether you're talking languages classes, humanities classes, or the science or maths classes, we involve the students in group work. And we get the students to work not only sometimes in homogeneous grouping, that means there's those of same kind of ability, but also sometimes in heterogeneous grouping, where they learn how to learn from one another through the differences among each other. So we even have what we call differentiated instruction for teachers so that they know how to cater to this, so that different students can excel at a different time. It doesn't mean that just because I'm academically generally less able than my friend, I'm nothing to contribute. So sometimes we put in, for example, case studies or problem tasks whereby it requires some kind of practical knowledge to come in. So this is where you will see that some of our so-called academically less inclined students will now be able to bring that level of expertise so that everyone has a time and place to actually participate and contribute in the discussion. So it is not just about excelling individually. We also believe that there are some kind of core values that we want to inculcate in our students such that they also value the group work, the collaborative work that sometimes can produce results that's far beyond what an individual can. We want our students to appreciate sometimes 1 + 1 in the case of group work makes more than 2.
Sin duda, además, el método PISA o la medición PISA no es para elegir el estudiante que está en primer puesto o el grupo, sino para elegir el promedio de conocimiento que tienen los alumnos. Pero otra observación, y esta es más importante para nosotros, aunque incluso se ha hecho en algunos sectores de los Estados Unidos, para aplicar el método en nuestros países, en América Latina, uno de los obstáculos es el costo. Es el costo de los elementos que son descartables, es el costo de los libros que tienen un precio alto. ¿Es posible adoptar el método en términos virtuales, de modo que se pueda, a través de los medios de comunicación, a través de Internet, poder aprender algunos de los elementos del método? ¿O es indispensable que, primero, que los niños manejen en la escuela los elementos físicos y que desarrollen todo el sistema con libros impresos, con elementos físicos, como digo? ¿Hay alguna posibilidad de abaratar, por así decir, el uso del sistema en países con bajos recursos?
Well, a big question. Reason is, I think, as I mentioned earlier on, the advantage of the Singapore system is we have a culture where we believe in investing in education. Like I say, if you look at the amount of money we spend on education, the latest, we spend about 16% of our total budget actually on education. This time around, we are normally second only to defense. This time around, because we have aging population, healthcare has moved into the second place. Yeah, we have to take care of people before we can say take care of the future. If the current lot of people cannot be taken care of, we're going to move ahead. So your ambassador, I think you are right in saying that we have invested quite a lot. But on the other hand, I must say that sometimes there are two things that we can look at the whole situation. First of all, I actually quite appreciate the fact that you mentioned about the advancement in technology with internet. With the advancement of internet, there are a lot of materials that can be shared. And I fully agree with you that it is not about just having those materials. It's how do we plan a curriculum that will meet our needs and it is suitable for the social, cultural context that we are in. I think what you need is to come up with something that, first of all, it meets your needs as well as the teachers can make sense of what we're talking about. The moment the teachers think that we are coming out with something that is too heavenly, not reachable, I think we can do what we want to do, we can say what we want to say, because the ground level practitioner, if they don't believe, I don't think there's anything that can be achieved. So it's very important to me is it must be contextualized first. So long as it can be contextualized to me is there are many ways of getting in touch with the material. Like I say, internet, they're full of materials. You can actually get access in touch with them. Even like, for example, I give you one example where the internet actually has contributed a lot even to the teaching and learning of mathematics. Earlier on, I mentioned about the CPA approach, concrete, pictorial, abstract. We developed that in the 1980s, where technology was not that common. So we talk about concrete, pictorial, abstract. But currently, with the advancement of technology, there is a lot of use of technology in the classroom, which we call virtual manipulatives. In other words, the things that the students are playing with is actually in a virtual form. So for example, the cube, sometimes you see in maths classroom that students are playing with. You can have the concrete one that you buy. There's also a one electronic version one that you can even move around, okay? Just like real ones, okay? And with that, it actually introduced what I call another type of representation, okay? And that representation is neither concrete nor pictorial. It's not pictorial because we actually can maneuver and change it. It's not concrete because the child cannot really take it out and feel it, but they can manipulate it. Now, as such, the thing is that I have worked with a lot of Singapore teachers where they started to use this kind of virtual manipulatives, and these are available on some platform, totally free. You don't even have to buy them. You just go in. There's a National Library of Virtual Manipulatives, all right, that website. Of course, if you feel that you own it, you can buy. Otherwise, you can just go on the internet and you can use it. And with that, right, the teachers actually have access to another kind of representation. And what I have actually get the teachers to work on is a new representational theory, which I call it CVPA. Rather than having the concrete, which sometimes can be very costly, and also sometimes inconvenient carrying down, they have only one set to show the students, and then they will show the student the virtual one. And the student will actually play with the virtual one, and drawing and the abstraction comes in. So it's CVPA. Now the teachers find that one is wonderful because the thing is that they don't have to worry about carrying the manipulatives. And what happened is that the students really love playing around with that on a computer. I think we all know that. With the next generation, they are so comfortable because the computer is so friendly, user-friendly. So what happened is that this actually have cut down the cost as well as the problems of using manipulatives. But the teachers still need to use a hard set of manipulatives so that students can see the relationship between the virtual versus the hard copy, all right? So one way is through the use of technology where you can get some of these resources available. At the same time, introduce representational mode whereby technology provides that kind of free access. Now, the other thing that I think is really more powerful is that sometimes the disadvantage of Singapore, even like say, we always keep reflecting on ourselves, is that ours is a very small economy. I was sharing with the group of maths educators in Lyon. They say that Lyon has about 5.5 million. They say, yeah, Singapore is only about the size of the people in Lyon, but our space is even smaller, right? But the whole point is that when you have a country that's big, you actually can have economy of scale. When you develop materials in your context, you probably make it even cheaper than we can make it. I give you another example of how this economy of scale sometimes even has benefited us. Now, initially, the thing is that in Singapore, hard copy of manipulatives, the schools are given funds and they can actually purchase it individually for their students' use, all right? But about five years ago, the ministry decided that there is a standard set of manipulatives that they can provide to schools. So what they do is they actually customize the set and they order, bulk order. When they bulk order, it's much cheaper. And then they distribute to the schools. So one way is that maybe the ministry, if you see that there are certain manipulatives that really is very useful, you can actually tailor it to your kind of schools and bulk order it, bulk produce. You probably have it much cheaper than you leave it to the school to purchase from commercial sector. Because when they purchase, right, they tend to purchase it on a one-to-one basis, which is very expensive. Also, the thing is that if you are actually purchasing it as a ministry, you probably get some good discount because it's a large number, and you can also make it something that is special for your own country, for your own students. So I think there are many ways of doing things, but what is more important is to put in place a curriculum that can make sense to your context. Now, the other thing I thought I would just take this opportunity to elaborate a little bit is that when I was in a number of countries where I was asked to look at their curriculum, one of the things which I noticed is that despite all of us trying to put in effort to develop a curriculum that is good for our country, for our people, for our children, sometimes we forgot one thing. When we introduce something new, the people who are implementing it, the teachers, they need to learn too because it's something new to them. So I think what is really crucial is not only developing a good curriculum, but also for us to think about how we can implement this curriculum by equipping our teachers with the right skills to learn how to do that. So in other words, the professional development of the teachers need to be taken care of so that this can really be effectively translated to practices in the classroom. Because in many cases, for example, in US that I visited some school district, they actually invested a lot in buying the books. You know, they have the resources. You just buy the books. But the books remain on the bookshelf because the teachers say, I don't know how to use. Nobody tell me how to do it. And the easiest is I do it my own way that I'm very familiar with. So it is a pity because I think they plan a lot trying to do a curriculum revamp. They buy the resources. But if the teachers who are implementing it are not trained, then the thing is that it can just be stopping short of trying to realizing. So we only has gone into the planning stage, not the real implementing of the curriculum itself. Yeah.
Doctor Lee, yo deploro que se nos haya agotado el tiempo y le agradezco mucho toda esta explicación que ha saldado muchas dudas, pero por supuesto nos quedan preguntas que hacer, no solo a mí, sino a todos quienes nos acompañan. Nosotros vamos a dar después una dirección para que nos hagan comentarios, preguntas, dudas y tal vez lo molestemos un poco más a usted transfiriéndole por mail esas dudas para que nos conteste aún más de lo que hoy nos ha contestado, que por supuesto ha sido muy importante y otra vez se lo agradezco.
Thank you very much. I'll be most happy to answer your question.